This program is part of the Devil's Mark Podcast Network, the official podcast network of Shadow Path Diabolism.
This is the Monday, September 14th, 2020 edition of the Dark Illumination Report podcast. On today's episode, I'm going to be answering a question from Hayden, who asked if we should be celebrating Christmas with our family if we're a diabolist. And you might be surprised at my answer.
This is the Dark Illumination Report podcast, the official podcast of Shadow Path Diabolism, your daily dose of diabolonian philosophy to inspire you on your journey down the crooked shadow path. Here's your host, R.J. Womack, Brother Nero.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brother Nero, and this is the Dark Illumination Report podcast, the podcast where we promote the religious worship of Satan and demons as a serious faith and way of life. And we also try to help our fellow diabolists on their journey down the crooked shadow path. I'm really glad you're here. I'm glad that you've been supporting this podcast, and I have to tell you guys that our audience is still growing. It's growing every month. It's getting bigger every month. We tend to do about 50% more downloads every single month. There's nothing slowing us down. We're just getting bigger and bigger, and we really appreciate that because I'm sure it has a lot to do with you guys and all your questions. And without you, this show would not be possible. So thank you. And for all you people that have sent me encouraging letters and have supported me and defended me and all that, I really appreciate it. Anyway, let's get into the topic, shall we? So Hayden asked me, is it okay to celebrate Christmas with our family if we're just doing it from a secular point of view or just to get together with family? And it really does depend. Now, when I was younger, I would have said something completely different. I would have said, no, you need to stand up for your religion and you know, you need to fight against your family and they have to accept the fact that you're a diabolist and all that stuff. But that's what I would have said when I was 20. Now that I'm 50, I have a different outlook. I'll give you an example. If you're going to a Christmas celebration, and I say that loosely, right? When I say going to a Christmas celebration, say you're going to what your family would call Christmas dinner. If you're not celebrating their religious aspects, all you're doing is eating with them, then that's not really observing their religion, is it? It's kind of a secular approach to the subject. And it also depends on who it is. If it's somebody trying to promote their religion, trying to invite you over to preach to you or to evangelize to you, that's a whole different issue. But if it's your great nan and they're basically asking you over for dinner because that's what your family does, that's a whole different thing. And besides, are you really going to argue with your great nan? And even if you do, is it going to change anything? Or are you going to argue with your grandma or whatever? It doesn't change anything. Your grandma's not going to change. You're not going to change. And all it does is create friction where there doesn't need to be any. And it doesn't do any good for Satan's kingdom because you're not going to change your grandma into a diabolist and she's not going to change you into a Christian. At least I hope not. So you have to ask yourself if it's really the kind of hill that you want to die on, if it's worth causing all kinds of family friction. In my case, I came to be a Satanist so early in life that all of my early struggles with my family accepting my diabolism came at a very early age. So all the drama and stuff was over by the time I was 15, because I came to Satanism when I was 12. And by the time I was 15, everybody had already accepted it or at least tolerated it. So nobody invites me over for Christmas. If they want to celebrate something with me, they usually send me a solstice card or they give me gifts before or after Christmas. They either give it to me on solstice or they give it to me a few days after Christmas. And my dad calls it Festivus for the rest of us, you know, because he wants to be funny. But it has become kind of a tradition that, we do a winter solstice kind of thing because Nero doesn't celebrate Christmas. And we invite him over a couple of days after Christmas. So that's kind of how my family's learned to tolerate it. But you have to do whatever you have to do for your family. And like I said, it depends on the nature of it. If somebody's trying to preach to you, if somebody's trying to convert you and trying to push their religion down your throat, then of course you should not celebrate it. But if it's just getting together with your grandma or your cousins or whatever, I don't know. I guess it's a personal choice. Ultimately, you have to decide. And I mean, if you feel bad about it, if you feel like you're disrespecting Satan, then obviously don't do it. But if you feel like it's just a celebration of family, then I guess it's up to you. Because ultimately in diabolism, especially Shadow Path Diabolism, the way that I preach it, your relationship is between you and Satan, and whatever you do or don't do is between you and him. It's not between you or me or any other diabolist. It's between you and Satan. And you have to live with your conscience, and you have to do what your conscience tells you is right, and what you feel is disrespectful or respectful to Satan. You have to judge it based on what you believe and what you feel guided to do. And that's ultimately the way you should approach it. Do what you feel is right. Do what you feel is right for the circumstances. Do what you feel is right for yourself. And don't give a fuck what anybody else has to say about it. If somebody doesn't like it, tell them to kiss your ass. On either side, either your religious family that doesn't like what you do, tell them to kiss your ass. If your diabolist friends don't like what you do, tell them to kiss your ass. Because ultimately, the relationship you have is between you and Satan, and no one has any right to come between that relationship between you and Satan but Satan. That's it. Or the demons themselves. Anybody outside of that, it really doesn't matter what they say, because this is an eternal commitment that you're making. And ultimately, if you really believe in it and you're dedicating your life to it, you're going to see Satan one day, and you're going to have to explain yourself to him if you do things that you know are not something that he agrees with. You have to understand that whole concept of having to face Satan one day very soon is very real to me, because I'm 50 years old. I'm a lot closer than a lot of you guys are to having that final day in my life. You know what I mean? So this is a very serious topic for me, and I take everything very seriously, and I take the idea of having to face Satan and explain myself for my actions if I do something he doesn't approve of very seriously.
If you would like to learn more about the Shadow Path Diabolism tradition of occultism, go to rjwomack.com. That's rjwomack.com. If you enjoyed this podcast and support our message, tell a friend, leave us a review, and follow us on social media.